Welcome back. Joining us in studio for our first conversation this morning is the leader of the opposition, Tracy Panton.
Good morning.
Mrs.
Hi,
Panton.
good morning. It's always good to be on your couch. Looking forward
It's always
to the
great to have you here
conversation.
as well.
Yes. Thank you.
So, we'll have an extended conversation with you this morning.
Finally.
And there is a range of conversations that I want to get into. I think I want to start by extending on a conversation that April and I were having earlier.
Okay.
One, with the exchange between yourself and the Prime Minister in the House on Friday regarding the Budna situation. And of course, the comments that he made in the media afterwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based on what unfolded in the House and the position that the Prime Minister has taken, what are your thoughts? Where do you stand on what you've heard and what was exchanged in the House on Friday?
You know, I have said in the House, and I'll say here, that sometimes I think our Prime Minister is bipolar. And I don't say that to be mean, but the story keeps changing. And I want to start off the conversation by saying this is, for me, it's not about Joseph Budna. Mr. Budna has been convicted of some serious crimes, both in Guatemala and in Belize. But all the circumstances around this situation leaves me as a Belizean with more questions than answers. It leaves me as a Belizean concerned about my personal safety. How can a situation with any citizen be handled the way the Budna case was handled? To me is completely untenable, completely unacceptable. Mr. Budna was beaten. He was restrained. He was handed over to hostile territory. Now, if you know Mr. Joseph Budna, if you followed any of his lives, you know he didn't go quietly. Mm-hmm. He was kicking and screaming to the point where the video footage that I saw, a police officer came to the scene and was brushed off. The question lingers, what did Mr. Budna know? The question lingers, who gave the order and why? It is clear to me, and I think it's clear to every right-thinking Belizean, that an order was given. And for the Prime Minister to say 2 weeks after this incident, after there was so much noise in the media on this situation, that he was unaware, highly unlikely. You see, even if he claims he does not get daily briefings, and I know whether he gets it or his CAPSEC gets it, there's a daily briefing to the Prime Minister's office on matters of national security. Even if he got a weekly briefing, he should have gotten two. Mm-hmm. By the time he decided to answer questions to the local media, and the only reason he answered the questions because the noise was too loud, and he figured, in my opinion, that he had to say something. And to think that as the Prime Minister of this country, you have to demand, those were his words, you know, mm-hmm. He had to demand a report from the minister responsible, from the commissioner responsible. And then when he got it, it was wholly incomplete. Mm-hmm. And then, as a response to that, the Prime Minister puts the commissioner on vacation. I say vacation because mm-hmm. it's 45 days out of office being paid.
Mm-hmm.
45 days, this will quiet down, you know, in Belize. The story lasts 1 week. It quiets down and we get back to business. And then to turn around in the next opportunity to say the commissioner made the determination that he, the commissioner, would stand back in the interest of transparency in this investigation. Unacceptable.
When you
know, when the Prime Minister, let me just finish this thought before I forget it. When the Prime Minister charges at me in the National Assembly and saying, I don't respect the investigator in this manner, she's a woman and I don't like her, this is all nonsense. But when he says that, he always raises the gender card. It's not about who the investigator, I don't even know the investigator. I've never met her. I don't have a relationship with her. I don't know where she votes, where she lives. It's not about the investigator. There's so much mistrust already in the police department that for the avoidance of any doubt, there must be an independent investigation into this matter for the avoidance of any doubt. The police, I am very sorry, cannot and should not be investigating itself in this case.
When you read the statement that was issued last Monday, a week ago today, it carried a certain tone, right? Where one can infer that the Prime Minister was not happy with the content of the report, perhaps as brief and incomplete as it was, and as a consequence of that, the Commissioner was sidelined. Because when the Prime Minister in last week at the thing in San Pedro,
the summit,
the summit, he made it emphatically clear, I need this on my desk by a certain time on a certain day, right? That deadline may have been met, but the work that was needed to complete the report left a lot to be desired. So the statement that came out carried a specific tone. Now for you to walk that back and say the man sat down on his own doesn't sound correct. Like for some reason or the other, it's not convincing that the compul would willingly say, you know what, Mackay sit this one out. He too has the highest office where law enforcement is concerned.
He should want a complete report. The commissioner should want a complete report. The commissioner should want to understand why the reporting protocols were not followed at the police station. The commissioner should be asking, why was there not an entry in the diary the evening that occurred in front of the police station? I don't buy it. And I don't think any right-thinking Belizean buys it. Let us have an independent investigation. So,
who would carry that out, though?
Well, we would have to determine. We would have to determine whether it is the members of the Senate or social partners. We would have to find whether we source support from a friendly country. It has to be done. This is the responsibility of the police department, is to protect and safeguard our citizens. It's not to abuse them. It's not to infringe on their rights and their privileges as a Belizean citizen. Mr. Budna escaped from Guatemala authorities in 2019. We're now in 2025. All this time,
as a free man in Belize for 6 years,
has been living as a free citizen for the last 6 years. While we don't have a formal extradition treaty with Guatemala, we do have an agreement on how prisoners are going to be handled. And all this time, we never saw it necessary to take any steps.
Because there was no formal request from Guatemala for his arrest and handover.
No.
Not
as far as I could recall in the media, there was no request.
The past commissioner did say that there was no request.
So you know, the story doesn't add up. I am concerned, Isani, because this is the same police department, should the 13th Amendment be passed, who will be tasked with the responsibility of implementing the 13th Amendment. And however, from whatever angle you look at the 13th Amendment, it infringes on the rights of a certain class of citizen in this country. And we cannot, the state should not and cannot sanction that. That is not the answer to crime. You know, I was at one of the consultations, the one in Belmopan.
Poorly attended, by the way, but
Very
yes.
poorly attended.
Well,
Consultation
you can't have a consultation at 10 o'clock in the morning.
In the middle of the work week.
In the middle of a work week, and expect there'll be any meaningful attendance. Consultation should be done after 5, so that those who have an interested stakeholders can meaningfully attend and be part of the discussion. So I was listening to ACP Smith. And she was saying in that discussion that, you know, when she gave her presentation, we have about 424 known gang members. We know who they are. And in the last SOE, we picked up 35, because it's not a net that you just cast. We know who we're targeting. We know who needs to be kept under this SOE order. So if we know this, why are we going to amend the Constitution that will affect 400,000 people? Makes no sense. It's draconian, and it's not who we are as a free and independent Belize at 44, you know, stronger together. That kind of rhetoric bothers me, because we're only stronger together, in my opinion, if we can hold ourselves, and I always start with myself, and each other to account. And the police department must be held to account. The minister responsible for the police must be held to the account. The commissioner must be held to account, but also the director of the National Security Secretariat. You will recall it was last year when the Prime Minister went back and amended the bill that created this Security Council to strengthen it, to strengthen their powers, to be able to strengthen their interventions, to put this secretariat under his office. His office.
So how you know I know 2 weeks go by and you never know about this thing? It happened in your constituency, and Orange Rock Central is not the biggest of all 31 electoral districts in this country. Like I said, it just, to me, it just leaves a whole lot of questions unanswered.
And I don't think the Prime Minister should, in my opinion, have any reservations. If there's nothing to hide, if this is truly rogue police officers who acted on their own accord, then let us find that out, and let us deal with that issue, and let us deal with it in the wide open, so that the public trust in the police department can be restored.
Allow me to jump in here quickly, April. My fear as a journalist is that all of this could lead to censorship. I say that because Mr. Budna was no real journalist, right?
Self-proclaimed.
Yes, self-styled journalist, all right. He calls himself that. But the things he was saying online, right, could easily be construed as something that would get under one's skin. And if he does it long enough, it creates a groundswell of people who start to support it or think along those lines. So I'm thinking to myself, if the man was pushing a certain agenda and pissing people off along the way, why not silence him by carrying out this act, right? That's the effect of it. Perhaps what they wanted to see happen. But then if you look at that and what the sweeping powers of the 13th Amendment would create Imagine if I, for instance, decide I'll start my own podcast or go on Facebook and start exposing certain things or whatever. I fear that the very same thing could happen to me as a means of silencing me or my voice when it comes to certain things. That's how I'm looking at that. Again, it's a personal point of view, but it wouldn't be far-fetched that one could weaponize this particular piece of law to go after someone.
Isani, it's not restricted to the independent media. I listened to how the Prime Minister lashes out on certain media houses, and I'm appalled. You want a partnership with your independent media. But if you work in a government office, you work in a government agency, you cannot in this country, if you have a particular political ideology and it is not aligned with the ideology of the government of the day, if you're not quiet, you lose your jobs. That is not what the Constitution of this country says. We have a freedom of association. We have a freedom of religious and political beliefs. That is what the Constitution stands for. But regular citizens, there's silence, almost radio silence. Why? Because there is the fear of the backlash. And this government rules with fear. I was told a story after the 10th where there were members of the city council workers who were sent home because they wore red on the 10th day of the 10th.
Wow.
Amazing. Amazing. I shared it with the Prime Minister. I said, I hope this is not true. I got the report out of the City Hall. I hope this story is not true. And if it is true, it needs to be corrected. Because partisan politics is polarizing in this country.
It has proven so over 44 years.
And it is holding us back as a country to be able to reach our highest potential, in my view. For example, the 10th. Whatever your thoughts are about colonialism and all that happened under the colonial rule, the 10th of September, the Battle of St. George's Key has some historical reference in our history. You can't wipe it away. You cannot pretend it's not there. And the 10th has become a
UDP celebration.
UDP celebration for the opposition.
And the 21st is a PUP celebration.
And the 22 makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. As Belizeans, all of us read, and this is the one time of year where partisan politics should have no place. And we must come together and celebrate our history, our heritage, our culture, our independence, our aspirations as a people, regardless.
That's an excellent segue.
Yeah.
Because there's this infamous picture that came out there, right?
Infamous?
I don't know if it's infamous. I had a question.
I'll use the description infamous. I'll stick with that. Simply because when it started going around, people were asking, okay, have you made amends with Shine Barrow? Or was this all just for show?
For show.
Let's go into that one.
Has Tracy done anything for show?
I asked her
Have I ever? So listen, we're all Belizean. And Shine Barrow is a member of the United Democratic Party. I have my differences with Shine Barrow, that's known. But this is not a time of year where we hold on to the differences. This is a time of year when we look for the things that bring us together, in my opinion. And for us to be in the parade together, I mean, I was shocked at all the comments I received. If the United Democratic Party has been through a very tumultuous period, we have bled to death, literally.
Completely hemorrhaged.
We have hemorrhaged. And here is an opportunity and it wasn't orchestrated, it wasn't planned, it wasn't anything to stem the hemorrhaging, right? And there's all kind of cynicism around it. It's a time, if the Prime Minister was walking and wanted to get into the pickup, I would have invited him to come in.
That might be our next thing too.
Right? Because we're Belizean and we're celebrating together, and we have, the party is healing. However, slowly, we're making strides in the right direction. It's not perfect, and it's not going to heal overnight.
Yeah.
But we're making steps in the right direction. Let's celebrate that.
Yeah, I think what was on the minds of a lot of the supporters of the party is, what are the next steps to quote unquote heal what is taking place? Because you have a convention coming up in October.
Well, no, it's in November.
In November, sorry.
So the grand reset for the United Democratic Party is going to happen in November, November 30th. I intend to run for leader at that time. We will have a contest for the executive committee of the party, a new chairman, a new deputy chairman, a new first deputy, and new second deputy. And at that time, I think we hopefully will be able to signal that the party is well on its way to rebuilding, and that we will do what is required to rebuild. We cannot continue to hemorrhage when this administration is literally and figuratively getting away with murder. We must, if there is nothing that should move us into action, it is what is going on in this country at this time. And people say, oh, the opposition is weak, you know, it's, yes. You see, we can't seek to hold someone to account when we can't hold ourselves to account. We must be a credible voice. And to be a credible voice, we have to hold ourselves to account first. And I think that's the work that we're currently doing.
So here I am. I've been covering the internal strife within the UDP for as long as you guys have been in opposition post 2020. And while you're touting the November 30th convention as a grand reset, as a journalist, I don't know what to expect, and forgive my skepticism, because every time there seems to be a push or a move to go forward, something undermines the efforts of those who want to see the party progress. So at this point, I'll be honest in saying, I don't know that as a reporter I look forward to cover November 30th with some kind of meaningful outcome, because it might end up that court, it might create more division, there might be a public falling out once again. We've covered these things in the past. I have certainly covered these things in the past to all of those outcomes that I just pointed out. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your skepticism, and I think what the media would like to do is to get into our gut, if you could, and all the inner workings, and not in a way that can be helpful. And so I have refused to discuss the internal party issues in a forum such as this.
You have, I think, respectfully so, but others in the party put our light on Front Street. So it's not like I am trying to gut the party or whatever. People who are aggrieved from within can't put the business on Front Street. I'll give you an example. You held a press conference last Monday at the office on Euphrates Avenue. Within short order, Alberto Agas posted a whole thing about Lee Mark Chang. Those were questions that we asked. The man got on record with his own opinion as to who Lee Mark is and what he believes Lee Mark stands for and what have you. That's also from the belly of the beast, so to
And that's
speak.
unfortunate. I would expect more decorum from Alberto Agas. He has been a warrior for the UDP for a long time. He is the vice chairman currently of the party. He is currently in charge of the party's affairs. So I think for him to have allowed himself to get in that tangle is unfortunate. And we may have more of that. I can't say, I can't control the behavior of everyone, but I can set a tone and set the example and work towards where we need to go. And that is exactly what I intend to do.
I think that for the minds of many Belizeans out there, that perhaps we're not necessarily looking at all of these different social issues on a day-to-day basis. That's why we have an opposition to uphold the current administration accountable. Some of the topics that were discussed in the meeting on Friday, I think my question is more along the lines of how are you all able to come to certain terms to debate certain line items that come in the meeting. An example would be the grants that are coming in to cover the MCC grant that is coming in to cover. We're supposedly getting a grant or a loan, from the Taiwanese government to cover certain, I think, is it sustainable development and national disasters, and so forth. How are you able to get these line items, find certain faulties in it, and then you have a rebuttal?
So there is the orders of the day. A House meeting is planned, and the motions and bills are presented, and as a parliamentarian caucus, we normally meet before a House meeting to go over the implications of these motions and these bills, and be able to determine what the position of the caucus is on whatever is before us. So a House meeting is a little bit more structured, if you will, than if we had a press conference and we looked at some of the issues that we believe require greater scrutiny, greater discussion, more information. For example, the MCC grant, there's a lot of information that is lacking. This agreement that the government signed with the U.S. Embassy for sharing of biodata, we know an agreement has been signed, but that's all we know.
We don't know.
We don't know the details, and the devil is always in the details, right? This issue of us buying into more subscription into CABE, the Central American Development Bank. It's an important banking facility. We have been able to access loans from CABE. It's $40 million. $40 million. And however you slice it, it's $40 million. 40 million US dollars. It's 80 million Belize dollars at a time when our healthcare system is in shambles, at a time when we are spending $50 million in our budget to deal with NHI, but yet we have a baby that dies from dehydration because the public healthcare system, we're not investing in the public healthcare system where a child or a family that is marginalized, vulnerable, poor, that's the only access they have is to a public healthcare, to the public healthcare facility. So it's not that we don't want to have some influence at CABE. Of course we want to have influence. The Prime Minister referenced Argentina, that Argentina was recently bought the same number of subscriptions to CABE. Indeed. How many millions of people live in Argentina? It's 400,000 people in this country, and that $40 million rests on the shoulders of 400,000 people.
Help me to understand the rationale.
Can I say this? You talked about, just because I don't want to forget, Isani, thank you. We talk about this loan facility to help us in natural disasters, help us with diseases. I suppose if we should have another pandemic, but the information is lacking. It's a good initiative on the face of it. You want to have access to immediate financing, of course. But who determines? Who makes a determination whether or not this thing is going to be considered a serious natural disaster? And the reason it struck a chord with me is because the Prime Minister used the sargassum situation as an example that they would now access this fund for. Do we want to access the fund for sargassum, or do we want to access the fund for some serious hurricane that wipes out Belize City, or another
Supposed to be like an emergency fund, right?
Admittedly, sargassum has been declared in other jurisdictions as a state of emergency, a national emergency at that point.
Are we there yet? Who determines?
Well, yeah.
Who does the risk assessment? And when do we know? What is the criteria to make that determination? And I'm not saying that some of these initiatives are not good initiatives, obviously, but I think withholding information or not sharing the complete information becomes a problem because you don't know, and that is what sends up the red flags. When the Prime Minister of this country could say 2 weeks after an international event where a Belizean was handed over to hostile territory, look what is happening in the Sarstone. When Belizeans are stopped from traversing their own country that you don't know, 2 weeks after, maybe it was 2 days, but 2 weeks, unacceptable. And so what raises the red flags is the lack of disclosure on what some of these agreements mean. The national ID. We're going to roll out a national ID. Does that replace the Social Security ID system? And if it needs to be replaced, don't we upgrade? If we need to capture more data, can we not just upgrade what is happening at SSB? We have to roll out a national ID. So there's no consultation. Nobody understands what that data is going to be used for. Nobody understands how this national ID will roll out. What are the phases of this national ID? Not even the people who are supposed to be doing the job. And they send out a survey via one of these BTL blast messages to ask citizens in an effort to do consultation what you think of the national ID. So my 85-year-old mother calls me and says, what is the national ID? How can you ask people to weigh in on a discussion when the information is not forthcoming? How can you ask the opposition to support a particular initiative if we don't have the information that will help us to make an informed decision?
Let me ask you a question. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just trying to see how certain things form a bigger picture, right? What are your thoughts about the pending rollout of the national ID against SARA, for instance, right? Where you have all of this biometric information being collated for the national ID, and then you have a semi-autonomous revenue agency that's supposed to come on board. Maybe there's a correlation between how they are able to look at your personal expenses and how you move your finances around against them being able to collect taxes and what have you. You ever thought about that?
So why aren't we collecting taxes now? Because a friend has a friend who has a friend. In this country, it's who you know. If you're a big landowner and you don't want to pay your taxes, you pick up the call and you tell your politician friend who you financed for the last election, make them stand down. Because I just give you the money to get through this election, right? SARA, again, might be a good initiative. It may be. It may help us to streamline our revenue collections in the country as it is being purported. but we need more information. And it's as though the government is holding the cards to their chest because the government has forgotten that they are to be held accountable to the people. The people don't work for the government. The government, we are servants of the people. When you offer yourself for political life, you're servants of the people. But the people, if you dare ask the question, particularly in the House, you saw the Prime Minister's response. If you dare ask the question, because he seems to have serious issue with taking any kind of constructive criticism, having any questions asked of him. If he wishes to tell you, you're on good standing. If he doesn't wish to tell you and you dare ask him the question, he lashes out at people. That is not acceptable from the highest office of this land, in my opinion. We have a duty and an obligation to report. He got an overwhelming mandate. He and his administration got an overwhelming mandate to do just that. And to say, I don't have to answer to you, because that is the prevailing attitude, right? You can't separate the Prime Minister from the man and the man from the Prime Minister when you hold that office. You, sir, you asked for the job and you got the job. Now it is your responsibility to answer the questions of the people. And we are there as the opposition to represent what we hear from the people. The people are very concerned about the 13th Amendment bill. The people are very concerned about a police department they can't trust. The people are very concerned about the high cost of living. People are very concerned about the lack of access to quality health care. If you go on the internet on any given day, there's going to be at least 10 people in your inbox that you know who is asking for help for
medical expenses.
I was speaking to a medical friend of mine in Corozal 2 nights ago, and he has a patient who has been diagnosed with appendix. You have appendicitis, so you have to do surgery now immediately. You don't want that bursting you.
Yeah.
But the family has to go and do a CT scan to confirm it's appendix. I had that same situation with my driver a year ago. He had an ultrasound, then he had to do a CT scan, a CT scan, and then he had to have an X-ray for appendix. He ended up in the hospital very, very ill. Thank God he's alive today. But the abuse that is going on in terms of having access to basic health care, and because we have all these imaging capability now, you have to get an imaging test when there's some simple ways in which you can make diagnosis for persons who may have appendicitis. That's almost I mean, I grew up in a home with two parents who were general practitioners, but they would tell you that there are acute signs if you have an appendix, things that you look out for that you can make an easy diagnosis. But everything now you have to go for an imaging test. Everything you have to go for an imaging test. I was speaking to a doctor who was once the practicing doctor at the NHI clinic in Albert, no longer there. I've moved on to another responsibility. And in this conversation, we were talking about the reality of people who are struggling every day to put food on the table. And at the end of the meeting, the doctor came over to me and said, you know, I can relate to that story, because I had a patient from the area that you referred to. I was referring to an area in my constituency that came in, a mother and a child, had chronic stomach ache, and she couldn't make the diagnosis, and she said, but I should be able to make this diagnosis. I can't make this diagnosis, until she found out that the mother and child hadn't eaten for 3 days.
Wow.
These situations are real, and whether you live in an ivory tower or you want to live in a silo, it is real. And when we say it's real, it's not political grandstanding as the Prime Minister is suggesting. It is what we hear and see every day on the ground.
Well, Honorable Tracy, way to come down to the wire of it. Final thoughts for our viewers this morning.
45 minutes couldn't have gone so fast.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat, it did.
I guess in the spirit of patriotism and in the spirit of our celebration, in the spirit of Belize turning 44, I really want to wish all Belizeans a happy Independence Day. 44 is no longer infancy.
Yeah.
We're no longer in our teenage years. We're now adults. As a nation, we are an adult nation. We can be and we should be stronger together. And I pray and hope that Belizeans will continue to agitate for answers. They will continue to stand up when things are not going the way they ought to go, that they will continue to hold all leaders, political leaders, civil society leaders, religious leaders to account. Speak up. This is our country. This is our nationhood. And we can only aspire for the beliefs that we want for ourselves, for our children, for our grandchildren, if we come together and work together. There's a place for partisan politics. There's a place for that. But on issues of national concern and of national importance, what is going on in the Sarstone, what has happened with Mr. Budna, what has happened to a child who died of dehydration, all these things require us to speak up, even if we get a tongue lashing, as the Prime Minister tried to do with me in the National Assembly. I reject it because I know I'm standing up for the people. So happy Independence Day, everybody. And please be sure, this is our Belize. This is our country. And we have a right. We have an inalienable right to stand up for the things we believe in.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And we can't let you leave without the motivational moment of the day. And the motivational moment of the day goes like this. One can choose to go back towards safety or forward towards growth. Growth must be chosen again and again.
Amen.
Fear must be overcome again and again. And that is from Abraham Maslow. So one can choose to go back towards safety or forward towards growth. Growth must be chosen again and again, and fear must be overcome again and again, by Abraham Maslow. I think that is fitting for the conversation that we were having this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's all about building community resilience during the hurricane season.